Today on Fednobabble, we're going to talk about the biggest financial crisis to your retirement. Is there such a thing? Yeah, there is.
This is Fednobabble, where Kevin and Cassie make federal retirement benefits understandable for humans like you. These two don't hold back as they answer questions from the Fed Pilot workshops and webinars, or from questions submitted by you at fednobabble.com.
All right, Cassie, hi.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Good, kind of.
Good.
I'm kind of good, but kind of
good.
not good because
Okay.
so we just finished one episode, and as we were talking, we came up with another idea that we've got to talk about this. And then let me preface this. We, as humans, we take really, really complicated topics and we simplify them so much that they almost become unrecognizable, right? So
Yeah.
in my workshops, I use an example. I say that, for example, let's say that I buy a manual transmission car for my teenagers to use. Well, I could just say, here's how you drive a manual transmission car. You let off the gas, you push in the clutch, change gears, and you flip back. That's how to drive a clutch. Here are the keys. Good luck. Right? That doesn't even come close to learning how to drive a stick. Although that's exactly what you do. That is spot on, isn't it? Right? But it's so far from the truth.
Yeah. Well, those are all the actions you take.
Right.
Right. But you aren't talking about none of the risks or exactly how to do it. Right. Like when you're pushing, when you're letting the clutch out and you're pushing on the gas, there's that line, right?
Right.
There's that little trigger point where you got to push more gas than you do clutch.
Right.
Or else the car is going to die.
And you're jerking it like that and burning the clutch out. Yeah.
Right. And don't forget to shift gears at the same time.
Yep. And don't put it from first into fourth, because that's not going to work either, right? You'll kill. So what's missing here is feedback, right? I could say that one sentence and they get it, but when they get in the driver's seat, then there's instant feedback of, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you don't do it. Oh, I can't do that. I've got to, the clutch and the gas have to go at a certain rate, and every car is just a little bit different, right? It's not always the same. And so you got to get the use of all these. There's instant feedback. Well, guess what? When federal employees retire, there's no feedback to the federal employees who haven't retired yet. And so it's like a black hole. It's like federal retirees go into this black hole and they don't come back to federal employees and say, you know what, that worked, but that didn't. And they say this, but it actually doesn't work that way. There's no feedback mechanism for federal employees to say, oh, I need to change it. So what they're getting is the, let off the gas, push in the clutch, change gears, flip back version of how to retire. And that's all. And that's not enough.
Let's face it too. When somebody actually retires and something doesn't work, do they really want to talk about it?
Right. They're not going to come back and say, oh, by the way, I'm having to go back to work, or I'm not getting the money I thought. That's kind of embarrassing.
That's the key. They might go back to work and be like, oh yeah, well, I went back to work because I needed something to do.
I've seen that so many times.
That may be true.
Yes.
But then they're not going to talk about the real reason that
Right.
they have to go back to work is because they're not financially able to sustain themselves.
Because I took my Social Security too early and I shouldn't have done that. Or
and I'll tell you what. Okay, I have the story. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Okay, no, please. I love it. I love it.
This just came to mind, and it's something that I think is key because this doesn't just affect you, it affects your spouse. Right? And I specifically say this because I had a scenario where when my kids were in daycare, now this has been a couple of years, but we were living in the Pacific Northwest. My kids were in daycare, and this older gal was helping. And of course, it was typically like the younger gals, like it's an entry level position, daycare worker, right? because they helped with like scholarships and things like that. And so most of the time it was uh, younger people helping out at the daycare center or, being employed by them. Well, this older gal, and she was like 70. Now, granted, she was very fit for a 70-year-old, but she was working at the daycare center and actually having to like run around with the kids, like not as an
Wow.
admin. And I
That's
was
how you
like,
get out.
I got to talking with her and I was like, oh my gosh, like, why are you still working here? And I didn't mean it in a mean way,
Right.
because I was just genuinely concerned, like, why does she have to continue working? And essentially, her husband was a CSRS employee and chose not to leave her any survivor benefit.
Oh,
And her Social Security income was not enough. And she was, for the most part, a homemaker because that was their generation.
right.
Right. And
Oh,
so now she had to work because she simply could not afford to live.
right.
And it just broke my heart. I mean, luckily there was, it was part of a church. And so there was some other gals that kind of bonded up with her, and she was able to room with somebody and stuff like that. But it's those kind of scenarios that people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super sad to me because it's like, gosh, who else is having to go through this? Like, she had to go write Congress a letter because she had no um, notice or paperwork on his retirement application either. So she wanted to verify, like, am I supposed to be receiving something? Because with the
Wow.
CSRS program, they're not required to tell the spouse, or the spouse doesn't have to sign off on not receiving anything, right? So you guys have
Wow.
to take into consideration what is going to happen with you if you can't live, but then what is also going to happen with your spouse? What position are you putting them in as well by not properly planning?
That's a really good point because a lot of times we think about my retirement. I'm going to retire. Well, it's I know you've worked for a lot of years and it's great that you're going to retire, but it's more than just you, buddy. Right? It's your spouse. It possibly even your kids if you're going to retire and have kids at home, which is not an unusual thing. I mean that definitely happens, especially if for law enforcement, special provision we'll call overall, right? That happens. Um, but again, it's that feedback loop of that they're not going to come back and they're not going to say, "Oh yeah, I messed up on this one." I mean, my turn. Ready for a story? Here we go. And this is
Yeah.
a real short, quick one. But I was doing a workshop in DC, an in-person workshop, and we were covering survivor benefits. Speaking of that, and there was a guy who had come. He was sitting on the front row, and as we were talking before the class, I found out that he had retired 2 months ago, and
Wow.
which he's. I mean, basically, he work, retired, and then came to say, "All right, what am I getting?" That's backwards. Just so everyone knows, that's
Yeah,
the
that's not the way to do it.
wrong
Please,
order.
our goal is to help you guys do that. Hopefully more than 2 months, like 2 years,
Yeah.
20 years
Yeah.
before
Let's go 20. Yeah, I like that.
retirement.
So he came, and so we were talking about survivor benefits. And as we were wrapping it up, he just kind of shook his head. And I said, "Okay, what's running through your mind, sir?" And he said, "HR told me something completely different to do because everyone
Oh
is doing
no.
that. So I did that and I did the wrong thing."
Do you see my nostrils flaring?
I can see you're not excited about that, are you? Right?
Ah, so
But there's
only because, okay, listen, HR, like, I love you guys. By the way, if you are an HR employee, I love you guys. But
true.
please take Kevin's workshop because you guys need to know what you're doing. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's simply because I get to hear from the financial professionals that we work with on the employees who are getting the wrong information from the people that are supposed to be providing the right information. And that's frustrating because, of course, we're trying to help them the best way that we can, right? But these people are looking at retirement. By the time they get to HR, they're like ready to turn in their paperwork, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes they realize, oh, I have to make a deposit, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. Oh, wait, there's service that isn't creditable here or not counted here or whatever. And they're having to iron out all of those details before they retire. And now they're having to delay retirement, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's a number of reasons why that could be a good thing.
Yeah.
But for those who are like ready to retire, right? Who like should retire.
Yeah.
Then they figure out they can't, or vice versa. They want to stay in service and they want to get this information, but then they're getting pushback from HR, like a certified summary of federal service, where they can't get the information that they want to do the planning properly. Right? Like there's just a number of bad information that can HR has provided to employees that is not good. But
so, well,
anyways, go on.
let's do this. Actually, Cassie, I think that's an episode that we need to do. Right. I think that's let's actually make that one of the next episodes, because that is something that we need to hit on at the same time of being nice to HR, because again, we love HR. But we need to talk about that. So let me go back to the story real quickly.
Yes.
With the story, do you think that gentleman, after he learned his mistake, only 2 months after he retired, do you think he went back to his colleagues and said, "Oh, by the way, I screwed up"? No.
Of course not.
No.
And most of the time, it's because federal employees can't go back into wherever they're working.
Right.
Like,
well, they have the phone numbers. They could text them, right? They could say, "Hey, start calling them all up. Say, hey, I messed up, and this is how I messed up." They're not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have better use of their time, and
exactly, like trying to figure out how to fix their mistake, right?
Right.
Right. So it really. Go ahead.
Yeah, they can't get on certain places. Like if they work for DOD or something like that, like you're not gonna, go out and go back to your agency unless you can hook up with somebody who does training or something like that, and then you can go back and share your story a little bit. But even still, like you have to. There's so many other things, right? So there's expenses that you guys need to think about, and inflation, and when are you going to receive your cost of living adjustment, like we covered in the last episode. Is a pay raise something you need to think about taking, because you're not going to receive the cost of living adjustment, or all of these different, it's like a puppet, right? You got to make sure that you're pulling all the right strings to make the puppet do what you want.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not, then it can end up in a very tangled mess. And that's the same with your retirement as well. Anyways, that's my analogy.
No, in the workshops that I do, I feel really blessed to be able to do these workshops, because there's a whole bunch of, I get feedback. I get people who come back after they've retired trying to fix what they've broken accidentally, right? They don't mean to, but they've broken, and now they're trying to come back to learn about how to get back in the game and fix it all. But I get that feedback. I get to see those who come back in and say, "This is how I screwed up. Oh, I had no idea that's how that worked. Really? Well, if I had known that, I would have done this." And so, I get to help a lot of people in the workshops, but at the same time, I do get the feedback loop. I do get to see, you get to see as well, doing these reports for federal employees. You get to see people make all these choices, and then you get to go, and you get to actually catch some of those mistakes before they even happen, and say, "No, you probably don't want to do that one because of this and this and this." And they can fix a lot of mistakes, sometimes even before they retire, hopefully before they retire. And that's huge. I can't explain just how huge that is, to be able to catch those things well before you retire.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's just, I had a scenario come across my desk yesterday, in fact, where it was, should this employee take a CSRS offset or first transfer. It was a FERCA situation.
Sure.
And, HR, thankfully, this HR department, they did provide information, right? They provided the
Great.
pros, the different calculations. Now, one of the calculations was slightly wrong, but it wasn't off by too much. So I'm not going to go there. But the calculations were provided to the employee, and they did at least mention the TSP snafu. That could be a deal breaker for an employee making a decision, because let's face it, if you're just looking at the pension numbers, the CSRS offset is going to look a lot better because it has that higher calculation, because all the CSRS years, or all the years, will get counted as a CSRS, and as opposed to the first transfer where you only get a portion of those years counted as the CSRS when you're actually in that program, and then the rest as the first transfer. However, we also have to think about that TSP match.
Right. Exactly.
That would be taken away if they chose the CSRS benefit, right? And so that alone can be a deal breaker for somebody, because who wants to lose a couple $100,000 or whatever that match would add up to over all of those years that they've been contributing to the TSP. And so there's a number of different factors that an employee has to consider. And that's why this is such a big deal. Like, this is the crisis planning in your retirement, right? It's not having a plan, thinking the government is going to take care of everything. And then you realize that's not the case. Not factoring in all of your expenses, not factoring in inflation as time goes on. Like we had mentioned in the last episode, the increase to your health insurance, the increase to your life insurance. What happens if you have federal long-term care insurance and they have another 85% increase for the premium? Then you're having to choose, do I keep it or do I, take less of a benefit? Mm-hmm. How is that going to affect me if and when I do need care? Mm-hmm. Right? Do I have to switch the place that I was thinking about going to if I needed care? Do I need to change any planning I did on my legal side, in my will, in my, estate plan? All of these different things are connected, and it's so important that people at least get a second set of eyes, a professional set of eyes on their plan to ensure that what they think is going to happen actually happens. And I cannot stress that enough.
Right. So because there's no feedback loop, because people retire and you really don't hear about all the mistakes that happen, we cannot recommend enough. Cassie does this report. She does it for free. Please get in contact with us, Fednobabble.com, and let us do a report for you. Let us just make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, right? There's no reason not to. There's no reason. There's no sales pitch. There's nothing like that that's going. There's nothing behind the scenes that's, No, there's nothing like that. We want to make sure that you get what you need so that when you retire, you don't figure out all the things that you should have figured out before, and you don't have regrets. Why retire with regrets? No good. Let's not do that. So again, Fednobabble.com, and Cassie can redo this report for you, and we'll get you, we'll show you some things in there that I'm pretty sure would surprise you.
That's right. That's right. Don't let your expenses eat away your pension benefit. That's the kicker there, because this happens all too often. And so don't forget to like, subscribe, share with a coworker or family member, friend, foe. Get us out there so that way people have the right information that they need to do what the actionable items that need to happen to make your retirement work for you.
Thanks,
Love
everyone.
you guys. Until next time.
Bye.
To get Cassie's comprehensive report on your federal retirement benefits at no cost, no obligation, and no sales pitch, go to Fednobabble.com. While you're there, submit a question for them to answer on the show.